Well, my name is Doug Keil. I grew up in the Midwest near Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've always had a passion for science and had a campus director, and this is a student-led organization, and I got pretty deeply involved with it. Was one of the student leaders there, and he had a real passion for international students, and a lot of them were from China. So it was an amazing opportunity, and I began to wonder if the Lord was leading me towards China. That then led to involvement with the Chinese church in Madison, Wisconsin, Chinese ministry. I would remember driving every Friday. I had a boatload of or a carload actually of international students, and just got to know them, did stuff with them. That is what led to my getting to know my wife, Ping Sure. And it's been great. In the course of all that, I did have a year and a half of Chinese. My wife was studying Chinese linguistics in Madison, Wisconsin, of all places. You'd think that you'd do that in China somewhere, but the Chinese department at Madison, Wisconsin was absolutely superb. And it's there that I got my introduction to learning Chinese, in addition to trying to get through the graduate program and physics at Wisconsin. So in addition to my PhD in physics, I have a master's in Christian apologetics, and it's a very addicting place. If ever you get to go to Taiwan, you'll fall in love with it. It's also strategically important for ministry because China, when I was there, was a very difficult place to have spiritual conversations. I would get to know students, talk to them about the Lord, and then they would disappear. And the problem was that some students had permission to talk to foreigners and some didn't, but everybody wanted to do it, and including those that weren't really supposed to. So I'd get to know the ones that weren't really supposed to, and they'd get caught basically and couldn't do that anymore. Because people had realized that communism gave them nothing. They were just coming out of the Cultural Revolution. They were very disillusioned. I spent most of a day with a former guy who was in the Red Guard. I don't know if you know the history of China, but that's not a particularly wonderful organization. And he was such deep regret for what he had done, and this feeling of being lost was intense during that time. And people were looking for answers and very open to spiritual conversations. But Taiwan is amazing because they have remained very free for the moment, at least from China. And I do believe, with 1.4 billion Chinese, if the Lord wants to return, he's going to have to do some sort of a work in China. I'd gotten to know Ben through an organization called Reasons to Believe that we both are passionate about. It's a science and faith organization. I'm fully on board with is interested in wanting to bring apologetics to other cultures. I think universally it's acknowledged by even people on the ground in Taiwan that there's a need for people to think through why they believe what they believe. We have, of course, that same need here in America. But there, of course, the questions that they ask are different. I remember having conversations with my father-in-law. They don't have a problem with the idea of God's existence. They really, really don't. In fact, you'll see little temples everywhere in Taiwan to some goofy god that somebody probably invented. What they have a problem with is, why should this God care about me? We've made a connection with a church called Grace Baptist Church in Taichung. It's a huge church. Across the street from National Taiwan University. Now, I realize most Americans don't have any idea what school that is, but it's like if you take Harvard, Yale, Princeton, put them in a blender, grind it all up, and plop it down in Taipei. That is national. It is the premier school in Taiwan. It is a strategic place. So the question on the table is, why support AOM in Taiwan? In terms of reaching for Westerners interested in missions, for the opportunity for the English-speaking evangelical church in North America, if they want to have any influence in or any ability to help with the growth of the church in China, it's probably going to have to be through a country like Taiwan. There is a growing church in China. Everybody is probably aware of that by now. They are struggling, though, and part of it has to do with the question of questions. Even in China, the church probably could use a heavy dose of apologetics. They get bombarded all the time. When I was a physics student, I met a lot of students from China, and science questions, I think, on the mainland are even more important to answer than they might be in other places. If the church is to grow, those questions cannot be ignored. And the goal of AOM is to come beside those churches that want to grow in that area and try to be a catalyst for growing a ministry that can enable a Christian to worship the Lord not only in spirit but in truth.